Thank you, or welcome, and thank you for having me, Vicky and the CIVP. When I was putting this together, I was quite excited to present this to you because I've always found the groups to be quite engaging. And it's one thing to leave a session with lots of theory, but how do we put it into practice? So my focus for today really is, we are looking at managing conflict in the workplace. Usually a course like this would take me about 3 hours. We've got about half an hour, so we'll see how we get on. We're going to look through some practical things today rather than the employment law landscape and theory, because I really want everyone to leave here with some useful information that they can put into practice. Where I will be focusing most of the session will be on the case studies at the end. So I really want you to be involved, because I'm hoping that we can learn from each other. Managing conflict. I would say that conflict, in my experience as an employment litigator, that means I work through advising HR managers, payroll managers, line managers, all the way to an employment tribunal. I would say that conflict can be the underbelly, the undercurrent, the catalyst towards a claim. And it is often something that we might put to the back of our minds, try and ignore for a peaceful life until everything blows up and it's too late to try and get it all in the box. My philosophy is, if you can manage the conflict first, I'd say most of the time you're not going to end up in an employment tribunal. And believe it or not, even as an employment solicitor, I don't want to see you there. Honestly, not lying. So conflict at work can take many forms. I've got a few here. Anyone surprised by some of these forms for conflict? We've got personality clashes. Classic one, really. A doesn't think much of B. Only a matter of time before a conflict can arise there. Grievances against management. That us and them culture. Yeah. Rivalry between teams. Has anyone experienced that? Give me a nod, you'd have to put your hands up. Lack of cooperation. Unresolved issues between staff, that's a huge one. Unresolved issues. And we can all put on our work face and everything, but it might just take one loose word, the last straw event, for conflict to arise. What does conflict look like? Well, when we think of conflict, we might be forgiven to think that it's the aggressive outburst, it's the fight, it's the slanging match, it's the name-calling over here. But conflict can also look like sickness absence. Conflict might be getting up in the morning and thinking, I cannot face going into work today. I cannot bear to see them today. I cannot bear to deal with that today. But still it can be associated with conflict. Behavioural changes. I see a few nodding of heads there. Changing personality, character, outbursts, linked to conflict. And then finally, presenteeism. Who can tell me what that means?
You're always at work.
I can hear you, but I can't see you. Sorry, say that again.
You always need to be at work.
Yeah.
Be there.
Yeah, presenteeism. Anyone want to add to that, presenteeism?
So even when perhaps you're not feeling so good, and then you're sick or something like that, so you don't take something substance, so you need to be in the workplace.
Okay. Yeah, pressure to show up. Anything else? Presenteeism? I saw a hand up over here.
Yeah, it's just, you shouldn't be at work.
Shouldn't be at work and you're there, and
Being too nice to somebody.
yeah. All of those are correct. But presenteeism is being seen, but your mind could be completely absent. Might be how you feel just before you're about to break up on holiday. I'm here, but I'm thinking about that beach. Yeah? And presenteeism can be worse than all these things. You could be present in a role for years, showing up, smiling, and you're there, but you're not working to your full potential. Your productivity's low, but you're present. I'd say that's probably the worst, because it can go missed. Management can miss that. Oh, Jade, she's okay, she's always here. She's always getting involved. But I'm only performing on half the tank. I'm not performing to my full potential. There's an unresolved issue there, and I'm so good at masking it by being present that not even the managers know. So that's an interesting one. There is almost always an underlying reason for conflict. And I'll say that again. There is almost always an underlying reason for conflict. Very often, when I'm advising an employee or an employer, they're rushing to the conflict. They're rushing to the effect. So-and-so has done this. So-and-so has said that. But they don't have a clue about the cause. Look at the underlying issue before you address the conflict. Better still, sort out, remedy the underlying issue so that there isn't a conflict. So underlying reasons for the outburst, for the low productivity, for the argument in the staff canteen. Poor management. We can be very good at upskilling and giving individuals promotions because of their technical ability. But does that individual know how to manage people? Yeah? They're really good at what they do. I see some nodding of heads. Technically amazing. So we'll give them a team of 20 and send them on their way. Personal issues, underlying issue, domestic problems, ill health. I've seen that before. Now that's a red light for me, because again, if we attack the effect and the cause is ill health, and that ill health happens to come under the Equality Act, but we've attacked the effect, so we're disciplining someone because of the effect, we've not looked at the underlying cause, we could be exposing ourselves and the business to a claim. So with all that being said, it comes to my final point. Why we need to look at the why and not just the what. The what versus the why. Where attacking the what without establishing the why might put you and your business at risk. I say you because there are some claims in the tribunal which can be brought against you personally. And if you want to hazard a guess at some of those, what they can be? Discrimination claims. Okay? So if I attack the what without knowing that this individual's got ill health issues, this individual's ill health comes under the Equality Act, and I've disciplined the what, and I ought to have known why, but I haven't done anything about it. That individual's dismissed for gross misconduct. They can bring a claim against me for disability discrimination as well as the business. 9 times out of 10, they'll sue the company. Why? Because they've probably got a lot more money than I have. But they can also pursue you. So line managers, those of you with responsibilities over staff, those of you heading that way, you're protecting yourselves, protecting your staff, protecting the business by addressing the why before you jump to the what. So let's look at this example. And I want you to have your what hats on. So let's get reasonableness and fairness out of the room for a moment. We're looking at what. So Catherine has 7 years of unblemished service. Over the past 6 months, her performance has been shocking. She has a bad attitude, and today she shouted at one of your largest clients. You are instructed by your manager to take disciplinary action against Catherine for potentially gross misconduct. What do you do? Looking at the what.
I think have a conversation with her to find out why she's
You're looking at the why.
Find out what she said, exactly.
Yeah.
And pull out the contract.
Yeah. Anything else?
What's it cost us?
Yeah. What's the damage? Yeah. So we're looking at the what, we're looking at the effect. What's the damage she's caused? We've had that conversation. She's showing no remorse. She shouted at her manager. Her outburst could have lost you a major client, so that could be the loss. And her attitude is becoming intolerable. So your investigation, which was just looking at what reveals all of this, what are the possible outcomes for Catherine?
Yes, I can.
It's not looking good. We've got Saka, yeah?
I know.
Before we get to that, well, not necessarily. It's gross misconduct or shouted at a client could have cost us a lot of money. Lose her, she's paid 18,000 a year. Lose client, pays us 80 grand a year. By looking at the what. Anything else? What are the possible outcomes? We've got sacking.
Warnings.
Warnings. Yeah? So disciplinary action, do we agree?
Yeah.
Yeah? Look at the why for a moment. Look at the difference between a what investigation versus a why investigation. She's been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Upon further investigation, we find out her medication makes her tired, increases her irritability. She quite obviously is becoming increasingly distressed, and she's too hurt to let her colleagues know the situation. How might that have changed my investigation? Now, the reality is, Catherine may still have been given a warning on the basis that we feel she's been here long enough, she ought to have really known better. But if I just stuck with the what and dismissed Catherine for gross misconduct, and she sought some legal advice, and it transpires that had I have at least looked at the why, had I at least asked the question during the investigation, I would have found out that she had a protected characteristic of disability. That does not make her untouchable by way of sanction, but it explains a little bit more about why her attitude manifested itself in that way. And I could perhaps help her as a reasonable employer by just addressing the why. Had I looked at the what alone, we could have been at risk of a huge claim. The tribunal doesn't just require you to say that you had to have known that Catherine was sick. They're going to want to find out, ought you reasonably to have known that she was sick? And that would have just come from a why question.
So, Jane, is it just the intention to try and find out that would mitigate it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Your investigation should comprise of a what and why. But all too often, yeah?
Sorry, I was just going to say, if she still chose, when you asked the question, to not tell you why, how do you stand then, if she then put in a claim against you?
Then it comes down to, ought you reasonably to have known that she was a disabled person in law? Now, if you say, well, we asked her not once, not twice, several times, she had several opportunities to tell us, yes, you know, she had been with us for 7 years, it was a bit out of character, but as an employer, you're only expected to do what's reasonably required under the circumstances. No tribunal will expect you to undertake some kind of forensic exercise. Yeah? But you will be criticised if you didn't at least try to find out why.
Thank you.
Yeah? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Elaine, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to say never look at what. I'm just saying make sure you combine it with a why as well. Because almost all conflict stems from an underlying issue that builds up over time. So when conflict arises between groups, number one, we want to review the way information is communicated to employees. We want to avoid unilateral decision-making where possible. What do I mean by unilateral decision-making? I'm changing your terms and conditions. Done. Yeah? We're making these changes. That's it. Now, sometimes you may have to do that. Yeah? But where at all possible, we want to make sure that that's communicated in a timely manner, with notice and consultation. And there are some cases where you have to consult, where you have to communicate with your teams. Health and safety being one. Redundancies, you're under a duty to consult. Business transfers, anyone heard of 2P? Yeah? So business transfers, again, that would invoke a duty to consult. Where it says so in your contract. You want to avoid a situation where your employees know your policies more than you do. And it happens. Yeah? So if your contract says we will always consult with you about this and you don't, then you could be at risk of a claim for breach of contract. Not because the law said you had to consult, but because you put that responsibility on yourselves, it's in your contract. So where there isn't a statutory or legal requirement to consult, it's still very good practice because the employees feel that they're a part of that decision-making process. And that's communication where possible at a formative stage. So before it's a foregone conclusion and we're just communicating it just to tick the communication box. It's when it's at a formative stage, so before the decision really has been made, where possible, ideally. I put there avoid death by policy to pick up on my earlier points. Have we ever seen a policy for a policy and then a policy for that policy? Yeah, I've seen it. At least once a year you need to be reviewing your policies. Are they still legally compliant? Do they make sense? Do my line managers understand them? Is there conflict within them? Because if you don't understand it, I'm sure an employee will. Okay. Promote joint decision making. So if there is need for change, looking at change management, if there is need for change, have you considered focus groups involving some members of the department so they feel they're a part of that change, especially those who are looking for promotion? You know, try for your promotion, for those who are ambitious and want to grow in the business. No, it's not just going to be about your technical ability. I want you in this focus group. Yeah, how would you manage that? How would you implement this change process? Because ultimately you're going to be managing staff one day. So try and involve them. Focus groups to involve the people in a policy. An example of that. Paper light project. I don't know if any of you know solicitors in here. We like our paper. We like our evidence. So when our law firm decided we were going to go paper light, we didn't say paperless. We didn't want to send all the solicitors crazy. So we said paper light. You know, the senior management team said focus groups from each department. So they were involved. So straight away we were told, this is how much it's costing the firm. We would much rather put this money into nicer work office spaces for you, bonuses, pay increases. So straight away, we're all for it. But we can't do that because you're using too much paper. Ah, right, okay. So you're all in. It's that buy-in. So promoting a joint decision making. Can you see the difference between that and an email one day saying, oh, we're going paperless? Goes without saying, doesn't it? So when conflict arises between individuals, we want to promote an open door policy. So that's an environment where members of staff feel that they can approach you. If open door policy isn't possible, can you set out regular intervals in your calendar where I'm going to be available for you to come and see me? Can you do that? Once a month. Surgeries, if you like. Because I'm fully aware that there are some of you that might manage small teams, there are some of you that might manage huge teams, and you've already got your own, your own responsibilities. But your responsibility is your team as well. So surgeries, advice surgeries, promoting an open door policy. In other words, where staff feel they can come to you and talk about matters which affect and impact them. establishing the underlying reasons. So when somebody comes to you with a conflict or an issue between individuals, before asking them too many questions about what happened, where did that come from? Why do you think that happened? Let them be a part of their own resolution. Are you with me on that? Yeah? Establishing the underlying reasons. If any of those underlying reasons might connect with a protected characteristic, we touched upon the disability discrimination, for example, check your policies, maybe get some help from HR, but this session really is to empower you, to empower us. Yes, human resources are there, but the responsibility is ours as well. Always consider whether a matter can be handled informally. That's performance management, misconduct, all of it. Could this be addressed informally? Could I take the individual aside, check that they know the standards required of them, check that they have the resources to meet those standards, give them an opportunity to improve, and warn them as to what the potential ramifications would be if they don't improve in an informal setting. I can still make a note. Doesn't stop it from being informal if it's not in writing. Might be a bit draconian to have your HR manager and a witness there at the same time, but you're still following that format. But it's informal. Make sure you know the business's formal procedures. We've touched upon that already. And consider mediation. That does not necessarily mean paying the cost for a qualified mediator to come into the business. Is there a third party that these individuals trust to be discreet, to perhaps sit in the midst of them and work out a resolution? You might not have the resources to call somebody in, but you might have somebody there that they both know and respect who can come in and speak to them about it. So on to our case studies, and I really want you to be a part of this. I really want to hear what you have to say. Case study number 1, we're looking at conflict between individuals. Monica is of Caribbean descent and often comes into work with braided hairstyles which represent her Caribbean culture. I promise you that Monica's not me. It's all just a Most people can't reach my hair to tug it. Lucy approaches Monica in a crowded kitchen and asks if her hair is real and proceeds to tug on it. The exchange leaves Monica embarrassed and upset. She comes to see you about it. Monica remarks that having never seen Lucy ask her other colleagues such questions, neither touch their hair in the way she touched hers. Monica is now reluctant to continue working with Lucy. Using all that we've just discussed, what would you do in this situation?
Ask Lucy why.
I like that one, why? Okay, so we'd speak to Lucy, find out what happened from Lucy's side, wouldn't we? Yeah? Anything else?
We'd probably let Lucy know how Monica feels about it. She's embarrassed her as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
I think Lucy should be appraised of what she's actually done, which is arguably assaulted the individual.
Okay.
Once you've spoken to Lucy and sort of laid down the error of her ways, perhaps get them together to sort of, mediate a little bit and get Lucy to apologise to Monica and say, I'm sorry I made you feel this way, and try and nip it in the bud.
Okay. Anything else?
Ask Monica what she would want the organisation to do.
Okay. I like that. It's involving the... I like everything you've said. This one I'm thinking, whoa. Yeah. Still liked it. It's involving the part... It's involving the parties in their own resolution, but I totally agree. Rather than getting Lucy to apologise, it might be once you've explained to Lucy, or better still, once Monica's calmed down and explained to Lucy how exchange made her feel. Lucy might apologise off her own back. Lucy might come to the conclusion, I'm just really enamoured by your hair. I wanted to know where you got your braids done. I didn't mean to offend you, but it comes out of a conversation. And I particularly like involving them in their resolution. Now, if I'd have jumped to the what and disciplined Lucy for assault, not out of business, I might have lost a really valuable employee. Worse still, if I did nothing and told Monica to get over herself, you're tender-headed, is okay. Okay, all it takes is for Lucy to be promoted one day, Monica's in her team, and you've got conflict going on for years and years and years. This happens. This really does happen. And then 10 years down the line, Monica just really lets loose on Lucy at a Christmas party. We sack Monica. Yeah, Monica brings a case for assault, race discrimination stemming 10 years ago when Lucy tugged her hair and you did nothing about it, and all of that could have been nipped in the bud straight away by lunchtime. But you can see where these things escalate. And I really kid you not, I've seen it. I've defended claims about it. I've brought claims with it, all from not dealing with it. So I don't think any of you were wrong. I think there's various lights and shades in some of the answers you gave. But I don't think any of you were wrong. Does anyone have any questions about that before we move on? No? Okay. Second case study. Conflict between groups. Okay, this is quite interesting and it can be complex because whilst essentially the conflict is between two groups, you might have characters who have varying personalities within the group, so it can be quite complex. I really want to hear what you have to say. So you receive complaints from the training team that the deadline for making expenses claims is unreasonable, and some people manage to jump the queue. One manager boasts that his claims get paid despite handing them in late. It is known that his girlfriend is in the accounts department, and colleagues suspect his claims are put to the top of the pile. This month, 2 members of the sales team have missed the deadline by just a day. They do not get the money in their monthly salary and complain to you. Bearing in mind everything that we've gone through today, how would you manage the conflict in that situation?
Why did you think it was an unreasonable deadline?
Yeah. Very good point. What led to all of this in the first place? Do we know about the deadline? What is it? Where did it come from? Why did they think it was unreasonable? Okay, they tell you because they're field-based, they don't always get the opportunity to put their claims in within a week. That's why they think it's unreasonable. Anything else?
To investigate if the employees are in fact being going to the top of the pile of the relationship with
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an integrity issue here.
Yeah.
She's got a conflict of interest as well.
And also, even if that's the case, we're talking about a manager here. What do you think about that?
He's getting dressing down
Yeah,
straight away.
yeah. Should know better, shouldn't he? I've got my lady in the accounts and she can, you're in a position of responsibility. You shouldn't really be making that boast aloud. Anything else?
Move them over to like mobile expenses so that then they can do it at their leisure rather than having to send the form into the office, so that then they can have it authorised and it's all done when obviously they're not able to do it if they're out in the field.
I like what you've said. How would you go about imposing that resolution then?
Well, I've seen a company here today that actually do that, so that's why I'm quite interested in it. Because obviously, going forward, obviously, you need to get rid of paper. Obviously, not every single bit of paper, but obviously to streamline things into the office to make life easier. Because not everyone is 9 to 5 based. Some people work different hours and they're not able to
get their expenses into the office on that deadline. So then if it's done on mobile, it's more accessible, and that information then could be transferred into the office.
So I like the idea, but how do you manage the change? How do we get to that?
You set up a working party.
Focus groups,
Yeah.
absolutely, and involve them all, especially this mouthy manager as well. Yeah, exactly. So we've got the resolution in mind, but we need to be careful how we roll that out, because we don't want it to look as though we've taken their side, we've taken on board what they've said, and we're just adopting a policy that suits them. The other people might say they're just having a whinge. They get their way too quickly. So having a focus group where you introduce both sides into it, after your investigation, like you've said, Shirley, might get you to where we want, but there's a process of getting to it that involves everyone. Okay, so some of the ideas I've put down, you arrange for the teams to meet with an impartial third party, either trained mediator, manager, someone that's well respected and trusted in the organisation, preferably not someone from either side. We want to keep that impartiality. The mediator helps the teams to air their grievances. Some people just want a sounding board. But what we're doing by having the group is we're making sure that sounding board is in a controlled environment. Some people just want a few minutes on their soapbox. Soap dish? Soapbox? Soapbox? Thank you. Some people just want that. They just want to let off their steam and then they'll buy into the resolution. But we want that to be in a controlled setting, not in front of junior members of staff, not impacting morale. So yes, we're having the meeting, yes, we're having the focus group, but it's controlled. Okay? Other things I've put there, they can suggest solutions. So again, being a part of the solution, being a part of their own resolution, putting some of the responsibility on them. How would you like the business to deal with it? Having regard to our size and resources. So yeah, I know Newco up the road do one thing, but their turnover has a few more zeros on it than ours. So having regard to our size and resources, how would you like to see this matter resolved? That's an important one. It's down to your size and your resources, and your staff need to know that. So with that, they identify that there is scope for deadlines to be extended. Further joint meetings are agreed at which staff from both teams will give short presentations about what they do. Get some mutual respect going on. Yeah? Maybe some secondments so that you can see some of the pressures that the accounts team are under, perhaps. And then at the end of all of that, they discuss the possibility of a joint social event. Brilliant. Okay? So that's one way. Not a rugby match. No assault. No assaults. So in conclusion, most conflict stems from an underlying or unresolved issue. Our job, before we attack the what, where possible, is to understand what that is. You might have an issue where you don't know whether it's poor performance or conduct. You can't work out whether they don't get it or they won't get it. If you have not looked at underlying or unresolved issues, how are you even going to know what policy to address this under? Be it your performance management, your capability, or misconduct. It's vital you look at underlying and unresolved issues. Number 2, encourage communication and transparency between staff and management. Really want to bridge the gap between that us and them culture. Encourage and reward staff initiative. It's your focus groups again, what comes out of that. Encourage it, award it where you can. And most importantly, I think here, address the why before punishing the what. It's just coming up to 5:30. We've got 7 minutes. Can take some questions now. If anyone has any. Was that helpful?
Yes.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Does anyone have any questions? Well, I'm around for the rest of today, and I'm here tomorrow. So feel free to stop me. Okay? And it's been nice meeting a lot of you for the first time. Thank you for listening. Thank you.